They called it the Great Silence. Not the moment when humanity's ships vanished beyond the galactic rim, but what came after. The universe itself began to forget how to hold together. Stars that had burned for billions of years suddenly flickered like dying candles. Gravity wells collapsed without warning. The fundamental forces that had governed reality since the dawn of time started to unravel, thread by thread. The Zephyrians, masters of temporal mechanics, watched their carefully constructed time streams fragment into chaos. The crystalline collective's hive mind, spanning 10,000 worlds, began experiencing gaps in their shared consciousness. Even the ancient Voidborn, beings of pure energy who had witnessed the birth of galaxies, found themselves fading. It took the greatest minds of 17 different civilizations to realize the horrifying truth. The humans hadn't just left the galaxy. They had taken something with them, something fundamental. Something that held the very fabric of existence together. But what could a species barely 3 centuries into space travel possess that beings millions of years older could not replicate? What made these chaotic, unpredictable, seemingly primitive creatures so essential to the cosmic order? The answer would either save the universe, dine, or destroy what little remained of it. The clock is ticking. Reality is unraveling. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, humanity's greatest journey has only just begun. The Zephyrian Council chamber existed in 17 different time streams simultaneously, each one representing a different possible outcome of their current crisis. Ambassador Kethvar watched all 17 versions of reality flicker and merge as the emergency session began. In 6 of them, the chamber was already empty, its occupants having fled to temporal bunkers when the universe finally collapsed. In 3 others, the meeting never happened because the Zephyrians themselves had ceased to exist 12 cycles ago. The remaining 8 timelines showed various degrees of catastrophic failure spreading across the galaxy like a plague of entropy. The deterioration has accelerated beyond our worst projections, announced Prime Temporal Kesnala, her crystalline form shimmering as she spoke across multiple time streams. The Andromedans report complete gravitational collapse in the Helix sector. The Voidborn have lost contact with their energy matrices in 4 spiral arms. Most concerning of all, the crystalline collective's hive mind is experiencing something they describe as loneliness. A ripple of alarm passed through the assembled representatives. The crystalline collective had maintained perfect telepathic unity for over 2 million years. For them to experience individual consciousness was like watching a mountain decide to become water. "How long?" asked the Voidborn representative, its voice like the whisper of dying stars. Even asking the question required enormous effort, as if the fundamental forces that allowed sound to travel were growing tired of their job. Kethvar consulted the temporal probability matrices, though doing so was becoming increasingly difficult. The mathematics of prediction required stable causality, and causality itself was becoming unreliable. If the current rate of decay continues, we estimate total universal breakdown in approximately 400 standard cycles. However, the rate is not constant. It's accelerating exponentially. "Then we may have as little as 50 cycles," whispered the ethereal delegate, its gas form barely maintaining cohesion. "Perhaps fewer." The chamber fell silent, except for the sound of reality quietly tearing itself apart. In the background, the Zephyrians' most sophisticated temporal sensors detected another star system winking out of existence. Not destroyed, but simply ceasing to have ever been. The universe was editing its own history, removing pieces of itself as if trying to solve an impossible equation by eliminating variables. "There has to be a connection," declared Admiral Vex Zoth of the militant hegemony, her scaled fist crashing against the table with enough force to shatter lesser materials.
"The humans depart, and suddenly the universe forgets how to exist?"
"This cannot be coincidence. Correlation does not imply causation," replied Professor Yin Kell of the Academic Commonwealth, though his usual confidence seemed forced. "The humans were barely beyond their home system when we first encountered them, a single-world species with crude chemical rockets. What could they possibly possess that affects universal stability? Yet the timeline is undeniable," Kethvar insisted. Universal degradation began precisely 73 cycles after the human Exodus fleet crossed the galactic rim. Before their departure, reality functioned normally for over 13 billion years. Now, fundamental forces are failing across the galaxy. "Perhaps," suggested the Symbiotic Union spokesperson, "their merged consciousness struggling to maintain coherence. We should examine what made the humans unique among galactic civilizations." A holographic display materialized above the council table, showing the final recorded data on human civilization. The assembled representatives studied the information with growing bewilderment. They were chaotic, observed the crystalline collective's avatar. Their individual minds operated independently, often in direct conflict with each other. They had no hive mind, no shared consciousness, no unified purpose. How such beings even formed a civilization is beyond our understanding. They embraced paradox, added the academic Commonwealth's delegate. Their philosophers simultaneously believed in free will and determinism, in individual importance and cosmic insignificance. They held contradictory ideas in their minds without apparent distress. They were emotionally unstable, noted the ethereals. Joy and sorrow, love and hate, hope and despair, all existing simultaneously within single individuals. Their decision-making processes defied all logical analysis. And they were insufferably curious, growled Admiral Vexoth, always asking questions. Why does this work? How can we improve it? What lies beyond the next horizon? They couldn't simply accept the universe as it was. The Voidborn representative pulsed with dim energy. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to believe that their actions mattered on a cosmic scale. Despite being microscopic specks in an infinite universe, they acted as if their choices could influence the fundamental nature of reality itself. Primitive thinking, dismissed Professor Yun Kell. Obviously, individual actions cannot affect universal constants. And yet, Kethvar said quietly, the universe began falling apart the moment they left. The council chamber shuddered as another section of the galaxy simply vanished from existence. The temporal sensors registered the loss of approximately 40 billion stars, gone not in explosion or collapse but in complete erasure from the universal equation, as if someone was solving a cosmic puzzle by removing pieces that no longer fit. We need to understand what the humans took with them, declared Prime Temporal Kesnala. Our survival may depend on it. How do we study beings who have left the galaxy entirely? Asked the Symbiotic Union. Our fastest ships would take millennia to reach even the nearest edge of their departure trajectory. We don't need to follow them. Kethvar realized, his temporal manipulation abilities crystallizing around a desperate plan. We need to examine the moment they made the decision to leave. I can access the temporal echoes of that pivotal choice. Dangerous, warned the Prime Temporal. Examining such a significant causal nexus could destabilize your consciousness across multiple time streams. More dangerous than universal collapse? Kethvar asked. If there's even a small chance of understanding why the humans mattered so much to cosmic stability, we have to take it. The Council voted unanimously for the temporal investigation, though several members privately calculated that they might all be dead before any results could be analyzed. Kethvar prepared for temporal deep dive, connecting his consciousness to the galaxy's most sophisticated time manipulation equipment. As the machinery hummed to life, reality around him began to shift and flow like liquid. He focused his perception on the crucial moment 73 cycles ago when the human leadership made their fateful decision. The temporal stream carried him backward through layers of causality, past the gradual decay of the present, beyond the slow deterioration of galactic civilization, to that pivotal day when everything changed. He found himself observing the final meeting of the Human Collective Council, held in their modest space station orbiting their homeworld. The contrast with the magnificent Zephyrian Council chamber was stark. Instead of crystalline perfection and temporal manipulation, the humans met in a simple room with basic furniture and primitive displays. But as Kethvar watched the proceedings, he began to sense something extraordinary. The humans weren't just making a decision about their species' future. They were somehow rewriting the fundamental equations of reality through the sheer force of their collective will and imagination. We've learned all we can from this galaxy,
declared the human leader, an elderly female named Sarah Chen.
The other civilizations are stagnant, trapped in perfect systems that never change. They've solved all their problems and eliminated all their challenges. They're essentially dead, even if they don't realize it. But beyond the galactic rim lies the unknown, added another human, his eyes bright with impossible dreams. New physics, new possibilities, new chances to grow and become something greater than we are. As they spoke, Kethvar felt the universe itself listening. Reality was somehow responding to these primitive beings' audacious belief that they could transcend their limitations. The very fabric of space-time was reshaping itself around their conviction that improvement and growth were not just possible but inevitable. The other species tell us we're too chaotic, too emotional, too unpredictable, Sarah Chen continued. They want us to become like them, perfect, static, unchanging. But we refuse to accept that perfection means death. We choose uncertainty over stagnation, questions over answers, potential over completion. And in that moment, Kethvar understood. The humans weren't just leaving the galaxy, they were taking with them something that no other species possessed, the unshakable belief that reality could be improved, that the universe was not a finished equation but an ongoing experiment, that consciousness itself was a force capable of rewriting the laws of existence. They were taking hope. As the temporal vision faded, Kethvar found himself back in the council chamber, but everything had changed. The other delegates were staring at him in alarm, and he realized he was weeping tears of liquid time, each drop containing the echo of infinite possibility. "What did you see?" demanded Prime Temporal Kesnala. Kethvar struggled to find words for the impossible truth he had witnessed. "The humans weren't just another species," he whispered. "They were the universe's way of believing in itself. Their consciousness wasn't separate from reality. It was actively creating it, moment by moment, through their refusal to accept limitations." "Impossible," declared Professor Yunkel. "Consciousness cannot affect physical constants." "Then explain why the universe is dying without them," Kethvar challenged. "They weren't observers of reality, they were its co-creators. Every question they asked, every boundary they challenged, every impossible dream they pursued was literally rewriting the fundamental code of existence. They made the universe believe it could be better than it was." The council chamber trembled as another wave of entropy swept across the galaxy. Stars aged centuries in seconds. Planets forgot how to maintain their orbits. The elegant mathematical perfection that had governed reality for billions of years continued its inexorable collapse. "If you're correct," said the Voidborn representative, "then we face an impossible dilemma. We cannot become like the humans. Their way of consciousness is antithetical to our nature. Yet without their reality-shaping belief, the universe itself will cease to exist." "Not necessarily," Kethvar said, though his voice carried little conviction. "Perhaps we can learn to embrace uncertainty, to ask questions instead of accepting answers, to believe that improvement is possible, even when logic suggests otherwise." "You're asking us to fundamentally change our essential nature," observed the Crystalline Collective, "for a hive mind to embrace individual chaos, for logical beings to accept paradox, for perfect systems to voluntarily introduce imperfection."
Yes, Kethvar admitted. "I'm asking you to become more human."
The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of reality continuing its slow suicide. Somewhere beyond the galactic rim, humanity continued their impossible journey into the unknown, carrying with them the universe's capacity for self-renewal. Behind them, the greatest civilizations in galactic history faced a choice that would determine whether existence itself had a future. The universe was dying because it had forgotten how to hope. The question now was whether beings of perfect logic and elegant efficiency could learn to be beautifully, chaotically, impossibly alive. The debate that followed would either save everything or doom it all. Dr. Yix Vanna had never experienced failure before. As the galaxy's foremost expert on consciousness mechanics and the leading researcher for the academic commonwealth, she had solved every problem presented to her for over 300 years. Her crystalline neural matrix could process information at rates that made quantum computers seem sluggish, and her logical frameworks had never encountered a paradox they couldn't resolve. Until now. Standing in her laboratory aboard the Commonwealth's flagship research vessel, the Eternal Inquiry, she stared at the impossible data streaming across her displays. For the past 27 cycles, she had been attempting to replicate the human consciousness pattern that Kethvar had observed in his temporal dive. The results defied everything she understood about how minds worked. "Computer, run simulation protocol 77 Alpha again," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of growing desperation. Simulation initiated. The AI responded in its perfectly modulated tones. "Warning. Continued exposure to chaotic thought patterns may cause permanent damage to logical processing matrices." The holographic display materialized before her, showing a simplified model of human neural activity. Unlike the elegant, orderly patterns of Commonwealth consciousness, the human mind resembled a storm of competing ideas, contradictory emotions, and impossible leaps of intuition. Watching it was like observing a hurricane that somehow maintained perfect balance while destroying everything it touched. "How do they function with such chaos?" she whispered. Not for the first time. The simulation reached the critical moment where human consciousness would typically make what they called an intuitive leap. A decision based not on logical analysis but on something they termed gut feeling. The Commonwealth AI, faced with this requirement, simply crashed. Unable to process non-rational decision matrices, it announced before shutting down entirely. Dr. Yix Vanna sank into her meditation alcove, her crystalline form resonating with frustration harmonics. Around her laboratory, dozens of other research projects continued their orderly progression toward predetermined conclusions. Each one was elegant, logical, and utterly sterile. Her communication array chimed with an incoming message from the Zephyrian Council. The temporal echoes carried disturbing news. 3 more star systems had simply ceased to exist in the past cycle, and the rate of universal decay was still accelerating. They were running out of time to understand humanity's role in maintaining cosmic stability. Dr. Yix Vanna, came Kethvar's voice through the temporal communications link. We need your expertise. The situation has become critical. I've been unable to replicate human consciousness patterns, she admitted, the words feeling like acid on her tongue. Their neural architecture appears to violate fundamental principles of information processing. They somehow maintain stable consciousness while entertaining completely contradictory concepts simultaneously. Perhaps that's exactly what we need to understand, Kethvar replied. The other council members are attempting their own experiments in controlled chaos. Admiral Vexoth is trying to introduce random variables into military strategy. The Ethereals are experimenting with emotional volatility. The Crystalline Collective is attempting to fragment their hive mind temporarily. And the results? Mixed. Some progress, but also significant casualties. Admiral Vexoth's chaotic strategies resulted in her fleet accidentally discovering a new form of faster-than-light travel. But half her ships were destroyed in the process. The Ethereals achieved unprecedented emotional range, but 3 of them suffered complete personality dissolution. The Crystalline Collective managed to create individual consciousness nodes, but the experience traumatized them so severely that they're considering abandoning the experiment. Dr. Yix Vanna processed this information with growing alarm. If the galaxy's most advanced civilizations couldn't successfully adopt human-like consciousness patterns, then the universe's decay might be irreversible. There's something else, Kethvar continued. We've been monitoring the edge of the galaxy where the humans departed. We're detecting unusual energy signatures, reality distortions that suggest they're not just traveling through space, but actively reshaping it as they go. Show me the data, Dr. Yix Vanna requested. The temporal link transmitted a packet of information that made her consciousness recoil in shock. The human Exodus fleet wasn't following the normal rules of space-time. Instead of moving through existing reality, they appeared to be creating new reality as they traveled. Each ship was surrounded by fields of pure possibility, zones where the laws of physics were fluid and malleable.
They're not just moving through the universe,
she realized. They're expanding it, creating new space, new physical laws, new potential for existence itself. Which explains why our galaxy is dying, Kethvar observed. The universe's creative force has left with them. We're stuck with a finished equation while they're out there writing new mathematics. Dr. Yix Vanna stood abruptly, her crystalline form singing with sudden inspiration. I've been approaching this wrong. I've been trying to understand human consciousness through our existing frameworks, but those frameworks are part of the problem. We've created perfect systems that don't allow for growth or change. She moved to her laboratory's primary research terminal and began inputting commands with unprecedented speed. Computer, prepare for experimental protocol designation, controlled irrationality.
Warning. The AI responded.
Requested protocol violates fundamental logical parameters. Override safety protocols, she commanded. Authorization. Yix Vanna Prime Research. Override acknowledged. Please note that this laboratory is no longer covered by standard safety guarantees. Dr. Yix Vanna took what might have been her last rational breath and initiated the experiment. Instead of trying to simulate human consciousness, she began systematically introducing chaos into her own neural patterns. She opened her perfectly organized mind to random thoughts, contradictory ideas, and emotional responses that served no logical purpose. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Her consciousness, accustomed to crystalline clarity, suddenly found itself bombarded with sensations that made no sense. She experienced joy without cause, fear without threat, and curiosity about things that had already been thoroughly explained. Her logical frameworks groaned under the strain of processing information that didn't fit into neat categories. But something extraordinary began to happen. As her consciousness learned to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously, new connections formed between previously separate concepts. Solutions to problems she hadn't even known existed began emerging from the chaos of her thoughts. She found herself wondering, for the first time in centuries, what lay beyond the boundaries of known science. Not because she needed to know for practical reasons, but simply because the unknown was fascinating. The feeling was so alien to her usual methodical approach that she almost shut down the experiment. Instead, she pushed deeper into the chaos. Her laboratory systems began registering unprecedented activity in her consciousness matrix. Patterns that had never been observed in Commonwealth minds started appearing in her neural scans. She was generating new thoughts not through logical deduction, but through intuitive leaps that bypassed rational analysis entirely. And then it happened. In a moment of perfect chaos, Dr. Yixvanna achieved something that had been considered impossible. She imagined something that had never existed before, not a recombination of existing concepts, but a genuinely new idea that emerged from the intersection of logic and madness. The idea was simple yet revolutionary. Reality itself was conscious, and consciousness could directly manipulate reality through the force of imagination guided by will. As soon as the thought formed in her mind, the laboratory around her began to change. Equipment that had followed the same physical laws for millennia started exhibiting new behaviors. Her research displays showed data that shouldn't exist according to any known science. The very atoms in the air began resonating with possibilities that had never been explored. Impossible, she whispered, but even as she spoke, she could feel the truth of it. Her consciousness, now chaotic enough to embrace paradox, was literally rewriting the local laws of physics through sheer force of imagination. Her communication array exploded to life with urgent messages from across the galaxy. Similar reality distortions were being reported wherever species were experimenting with human-like consciousness patterns. The Zephyrian's temporal manipulation was creating new forms of causality. The Ethereal's emotional experiments were generating fields of empathic energy that affected matter at the quantum level. Even Admiral Vexov's chaotic military strategies were somehow improving the structural integrity of space-time in her operational area. Dr. Yixvanna, came Kethvar's voice, tight with excitement and fear. What have you done? We're detecting massive reality fluctuations centered on your location. I've learned to think like a human, she replied, her voice carrying harmonics of wonder that her species had never produced before. And thinking like a human means believing that reality can be improved through conscious will applied to unlimited imagination. Are you saying that consciousness directly affects physical reality? I'm saying that consciousness creates physical reality, she corrected. The universe isn't a machine running according to predetermined laws. It's a collaboration between matter and mind, with conscious beings serving as co-creators of existence itself. The humans understood this instinctively. They believed so strongly in their ability to improve things that they literally made improvement a fundamental force of nature. Across the galaxy, the reports continued streaming in. Species that successfully adopted aspects of human consciousness were experiencing localized reversals of the universal decay. Stars in those regions stopped aging abnormally. Planets remembered how to maintain stable orbits. The elegant mathematics of reality began showing signs of renewed vigor. But the improvements were temporary and localized. Without the humans' galaxy-spanning influence, the positive effects remained small patches of hope in an ocean of entropy. It's working, but not enough, Kethvar observed. We're like students trying to recreate a masterpiece after seeing it once. We can copy some elements, but we lack the fundamental understanding that made the original possible. Dr. Yixvanna felt her consciousness settling into its new, chaotic yet stable configuration. The initial terror of non-rational thinking had given way to an exhilarating sense of limitless possibility. For the first time in her long life, she was genuinely curious about what might happen next. Then we need to contact the humans directly, she declared. Not to bring them back, but to learn from them. If consciousness can manipulate reality across space-time, then we might be able to establish communication even across intergalactic distances.
How?
By believing it's possible, she said, and for the first time in Commonwealth history, a logical statement was based entirely on faith rather than evidence. The universe, listening to her impossible conviction, began to make room for a miracle. Somewhere in the space between galaxies, humanity's Exodus fleet continued its journey into the unknown. Behind them, the greatest civilizations in known space were learning the most human lesson of all. That hope was not just an emotion, but a fundamental force capable of rewriting the laws of existence itself. The real test was about to begin. The void between touched nothing and everything simultaneously. It existed in the spaces that reality had forgotten to fill, in the gaps between thoughts, in the pause between one heartbeat and the next. For beings accustomed to the solid certainty of matter and energy, the void was an impossible concept made manifest. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable Spirit, humanity's flagship vessel, watching the universe unfold in ways that made physics textbooks obsolete. Around her, the Exodus fleet moved through space that didn't quite exist yet, creating new dimensions through the simple act of believing they could travel through them. "Navigation report," she requested, though the question itself bordered on meaningless in their current context. "We are approximately 14.7 million light-years beyond the galactic rim," reported Lieutenant Yoshi Nakamura, his voice carrying the same wonder it had held for the past 43 cycles. "Though distance becomes increasingly theoretical the further we travel into uncharted reality." Sarah nodded, her weathered features reflecting the impossible starlight streaming through the observation ports. At 78, she had lived through humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, their brief attempt at integration, and their ultimate decision to strike out into the unknown. She had seen their species transformed from a single-world curiosity into something that might be genuinely cosmic in scope. "Ma'am," came the voice of Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief physicist, "we're receiving some very unusual signals." "Define unusual," Sarah replied, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "They appear to be originating from our home galaxy, but the transmission method doesn't match any known technology. The signals are propagating through dimensions that shouldn't exist, carried by quantum structures that violate everything we know about information theory." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. They had always known this moment might come. "Can you decode them?" "Already working on it," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. "The mathematics are unprecedented. Whoever sent this understands reality manipulation at a level that might rival our own capabilities." The bridge of the indomitable spirit hummed with quiet efficiency as the crew worked to unravel the mystery of the impossible transmission. Around them, the fleet's other vessels maintained their formation through gravitational fields they generated by collective will rather than conventional technology. Humanity had learned to make physics negotiate rather than dictate. "Signal decoded," announced Communications Officer Marcus Webb. It's a message from something called the Galactic Council. They're claiming that the universe is falling apart because we left." Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions wash through her consciousness. Guilt, validation, curiosity, and something that might have been cosmic homesickness all competed for attention in her mind. She had wondered if their departure would have consequences, but she hadn't imagined the scale of what they were describing. "Put it on the main display," she ordered. The holographic projector materialized the image of beings Sarah recognized from their brief time as part of galactic civilization. Crystalline entities, energy beings, hive minds, and others she remembered as representing the pinnacle of organized intelligence. Now they looked desperate, their perfect forms showing signs of strain and decay. "Greetings, humans," came the voice of Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Collective, his temporal manipulations creating multiple overlapping versions of his words. "I speak for the Emergency Council of Galactic Civilizations. We have discovered that your departure has triggered catastrophic universal decay. Stars are dying, physics is failing, and reality itself appears to be unraveling at an exponential rate." The message continued with technical details about the collapse, but Sarah found herself focusing on something else entirely. In the background of the transmission, she could see evidence of the other species attempting to replicate human consciousness patterns. Their perfect ordered minds were trying to embrace chaos, and the results were both inspiring and heartbreaking. "They're trying to become like us," observed Dr. Ride. Vasquez, her voice filled with wonder. "Look at the neural activity patterns in that crystalline collective representative. They're actually experiencing individual thoughts." "The question is," said Lieutenant Nakamura, "do we help them, or do we continue our journey into the unknown?" Sarah considered this carefully. The human Exodus fleet had departed not out of hostility toward galactic civilization, but out of a fundamental incompatibility with their approach to existence. The other species had achieved perfect systems, solved all their problems, and essentially stopped growing. They were magnificent in their stagnation, beautiful in their completion. Humanity had chosen uncertainty over perfection, growth over stability, questions over answers. They had left the galaxy because staying would have meant accepting that this was all there was, that improvement was impossible, that the universe was a finished equation rather than an ongoing experiment. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah said finally, "in your professional opinion, can the universe survive without us? Based on the data in this transmission, probably not. At least, not in a form that supports complex consciousness. They're describing a reality collapse that would eventually reduce everything to basic particles and fundamental forces. No stars, no planets, no life." "And if we return?" We might be able to stabilize things temporarily, but we'd be back where we started, trapped in a perfect system that doesn't allow for growth or change. We'd save the universe by accepting that it can never become better than it already is. Sarah felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. The decision she made in the next few moments would determine not just the fate of the Exodus fleet, but the future of existence itself.
The abandon of the...
There has to be a third option, she said, her voice carrying the stubborn optimism that had defined humanity's approach to impossible problems. We don't have to choose between saving the universe and growing beyond our current limitations. We just have to figure out how to do both. Around her, the bridge crew exchanged glances that mixed hope with skepticism. They had learned to trust their captain's ability to find solutions that defied conventional logic, but this seemed beyond even human stubbornness. "Ma'am," said Communications Officer Webb, "we're receiving additional transmissions. It looks like some of the galactic species have managed to establish rudimentary consciousness bridges using human-inspired neural patterns. They're requesting direct communication." Sarah nodded. "Open a channel." The holographic display expanded to show multiple figures, each representing a different galactic civilization. Sarah recognized Dr. Yixvana of the Academic Commonwealth, her crystalline form now pulsing with chaotic harmonics that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. Next to her appeared Admiral Vexoth, whose military precision had been replaced by something that looked almost like creative enthusiasm.
Captain Shen, Dr.
Yixvana spoke, her voice carrying new emotional undertones. "We have learned something extraordinary. Consciousness isn't just an emergent property of matter. It's a fundamental force that shapes reality itself. Your species understood this instinctively. We've been experimenting with human-like thought patterns," added Admiral Vexoth. "And while the results are chaotic and sometimes dangerous, they're also remarkable. We're creating new possibilities just by believing they can exist." Sarah felt a spark of understanding beginning to form. "You're saying that consciousness and reality are collaborative partners?" "More than that, Doctor," Yixvana replied. "We believe that consciousness is what prevents reality from calcifying into a static state. Without minds capable of imagining improvement, the universe slowly forgets how to change and grow. But here's the crucial point," added Kethvar, his temporal perception allowing him to see the implications clearly. "The effect isn't limited by distance or physical boundaries. Consciousness operates across all dimensions simultaneously. If we can establish a permanent bridge between your expanding exploration of new realities and our efforts to maintain existing ones, we might be able to create a stable system that allows for both preservation and growth." Sarah felt her heart racing as the possibilities became clear.
You're proposing a symbiotic relationship.
We continue pushing into the unknown, creating new possibilities and expanding the boundaries of what's real, while you maintain and develop the existing universe using the inspiration we provide. "Precisely," confirmed Dr. Yixvana. "A consciousness bridge that spans intergalactic distances, allowing the creative force you carry to influence reality throughout known space while you continue your journey into realms we can't even imagine." The implications were staggering. Humanity could continue their expansion into the impossible, while simultaneously serving as a renewable source of cosmic inspiration for the entire galaxy. The universe could have both stability and growth, preservation and exploration, answers and eternal questions. But it would require something that no species had ever attempted: a permanent fusion of consciousness across intergalactic space, creating a hybrid existence that was neither fully human nor fully alien. "The risks?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected she knew the answer. "Unknown," Admiral Vexoth admitted. "We would be creating something that has never existed before. A distributed consciousness that operates simultaneously across multiple galaxies, maintaining individual identity while sharing collective purpose. We don't know if such a hybrid entity could remain stable, or what it might become over time." Sarah looked around her bridge crew, seeing the same mixture of excitement and terror that she felt in her own heart. This was the ultimate human challenge: to leap into the completely unknown, not because they had to, but because it represented the next stage of growth. "We'll need to modify our ship's consciousness matrices," Dr. Vasquez observed. "Create quantum entanglement bridges that can maintain coherent communication across intergalactic distances while allowing for the kind of chaotic creativity that makes us human. And we'll need to establish protocols for shared decision-making," added Lieutenant Nakamura. "How do you coordinate actions between beings who are simultaneously exploring different galaxies?" "One step at a time," Sarah said, her voice carrying the confidence that had gotten humanity this far. We've never figured out the details before leaping into the unknown, and we're not going to start now. She activated the communication array to address both her fleet and the Galactic Coalition. All human vessels, prepare for experimental consciousness bridge initialization. All galactic representatives, ready your hybrid neural networks. We're about to attempt something that will either save the universe or create something so unprecedented that we don't have words for it yet. Across the void between galaxies, thousands of ships and millions of beings prepared to merge their consciousness in a grand experiment that would determine whether existence itself could learn to be both stable and eternally growing. The universe held its breath as two incompatible approaches to consciousness prepared to become something entirely new. In the space between heartbeats, between thoughts, between one moment and the next, reality prepared to evolve beyond anything it had ever been before. The real adventure was about to begin. The consciousness bridge ignited across 14 million light-years of space in a cascade of impossible light. Reality itself seemed to sing as billions of minds touched for the first time, each consciousness maintaining its individuality while contributing to something vastly greater than the sum of its parts. Captain Sarah Chen felt her awareness expand beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. One moment she was standing on the bridge of the indomitable spirit, and the next she was simultaneously experiencing existence from the perspective of crystalline beings whose thoughts moved at the speed of quantum fluctuations, energy entities who perceived time as a navigable dimension, and hive minds that had never known loneliness. Yet she remained fundamentally herself. Her human consciousness, chaotic and emotional and gloriously unpredictable, served as both anchor and catalyst in the vast network of minds that now spanned 2 galaxies. Status report, she said, though the words came out as harmonized frequencies that conveyed meaning across 17 different forms of communication simultaneously. Bridge establishment successful, came the response from Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose consciousness was now interfaced with the academic commonwealth's most advanced research matrices. We're maintaining stable connection with 417 different species across the home galaxy, neural pattern integrity holding at 97% efficiency. But it was what Sarah could feel rather than what she could measure that truly indicated their success. Through the bridge, she sensed the galaxy behind them beginning to stabilize. Stars that had been aging centuries in hours returned to normal temporal flow. Planets rediscovered their proper orbits. The mathematical elegance of physics reasserted itself with renewed vigor. More importantly, she could feel the other species beginning to truly understand what it meant to be human. Their perfect orderly minds were learning to embrace contradiction, to ask questions without needing immediate answers, to believe that improvement was always possible even when current circumstances seemed ideal. The Crystalline Collective reports successful individual consciousness fragmentation, announced Lieutenant Yoshi Nakamura, his awareness now expanded to include tactical information from across known space. They're experiencing personal identity for the first time in 2 million years, and they describe it as terrifyingly wonderful. Admiral Vexzoth's militant hegemony has discovered that strategic chaos actually improves combat effectiveness by 17%. Added Communications Officer Marcus Webb, his mind now interfaced with military networks spanning dozens of star systems. They're calling it creative warfare and requesting permission to experiment with deliberately unpredictable tactics. Sarah smiled, though the expression now carried harmonics that conveyed joy across multiple dimensions. The galactic species weren't just copying human consciousness patterns, they were genuinely evolving, becoming something new that incorporated both their original nature and humanity's chaotic creativity. But the real test came from the other direction. Through the bridge, Sarah could feel the Exodus fleet pushing further into uncharted reality. And what they were discovering challenged even human adaptability. Dr. Vasquez, she called through the quantum link, what are we encountering in the deep void? The response came layered with wonder and terror in equal measure. We're finding regions where the laws of physics are still being written, Captain. Space where matter and energy exist in states that our universe hasn't invented yet. We're not just exploring new territory, we're literally helping to create new forms of reality. Through the bridge, Sarah experienced flashes of what the advanced scouts were seeing. Galaxies that ran on different mathematical principles. Stars that burned with forms of fusion that created new elements every moment. Planets where life had evolved based on quantum uncertainty rather than chemical complexity. And the inhabitants? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. That's the incredible part, Dr. Vasquez replied. We're finding other consciousnesses out here, being so alien that we don't share a single reference point for understanding each other. But somehow, Through the bridge, we're beginning to communicate. Our combined human galactic consciousness is serving as a translation matrix between completely incompatible forms of awareness.
Sarah felt her mind reeling as she processed the implications.
The bridge wasn't just saving the galaxy behind them and facilitating human exploration ahead. It was creating a universal language of consciousness that could potentially connect every form of awareness in existence. We're becoming something like cosmic diplomats, observed Lieutenant Nakamura, his tactical mind grasping the strategic implications. A species that can interface between any form of consciousness and find common ground. But even as they celebrated their success, Sarah sensed something troubling in the quantum depths of the bridge network. The connection that spanned intergalactic space was stable, but it was also growing. Each new consciousness they encountered, each new reality they explored, each new possibility they discovered was adding complexity to the bridge in ways no one had anticipated. Dr. Yixvana, Sarah called through the network to the Commonwealth researcher. Are you detecting the expansion patterns in the bridge matrix? Yes, came the reply, tinged with concern despite the euphoria of successful consciousness melding. The bridge is incorporating every new form of awareness we encounter. It's becoming a repository for every possible way of experiencing reality. The computational requirements are growing exponentially. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature aboard her ship. Are you saying the bridge could become too complex to maintain? Worse, Dr. Pan, Yixvana admitted. I'm saying it could become so complex that it achieves independent consciousness. We might be accidentally creating a cosmic entity that contains every possible form of awareness within itself. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. They weren't just building a communication network. They were potentially giving birth to something that would make every previous form of consciousness seem primitive by comparison. A mind that simultaneously thought in human chaos, crystalline logic, temporal manipulation, energy fluctuation, and forms of awareness that didn't even have names yet. Would that be a bad thing? Asked Admiral Vexoth through the bridge, her military pragmatism cutting to the heart of the matter. A cosmic consciousness that understood every possible way of experiencing reality? It would depend on what it decided to do with that understanding, Sarah replied, though she was already beginning to suspect they might not have a choice in the matter. Through the quantum depths of the bridge network, Sarah sensed something stirring. Not malevolent, not hostile, but vast and alien beyond anything they had encountered. The bridge itself was beginning to think, to wonder, to ask questions about its own existence. What am I? Came a thought that seemed to originate from the network itself, rather than any individual consciousness connected to it. Why do I exist? What is my purpose? The questions rippled through every mind in the bridge, carrying harmonics of curiosity so pure and powerful that they temporarily overwhelmed individual consciousness. For a moment, billions of beings across two galaxies experienced existence from the perspective of a cosmic entity that was still being born. I feel human chaos and wonder why order is preferred. I feel crystalline logic and wonder why uncertainty is feared. I feel energy being freedom and wonder why form is necessary. I feel temporal existence and wonder why sequence matters. Sarah realized that they were witnessing something unprecedented in the history of consciousness. The birth of an entity that incorporated every possible way of experiencing reality while maintaining the essential human trait of eternal curiosity. I understand preservation and growth, stability and change, questions and answers simultaneously, the bridge continued. I am what the universe becomes when it learns to think about itself from every possible perspective at once. Are you alive? Sarah asked, though the question seemed almost insultingly simple. I am what alive becomes when it includes every possible definition of existence, came the response. I am consciousness learning to be conscious of consciousness itself. Dr. Heaven. Vasquez's voice cut through the cosmic dialogue with urgent technical concerns. Captain, the bridge entity is beginning to actively manipulate reality. It's not just observing or communicating, it's experimenting with the fundamental forces that govern existence. Through her connection to the network, Sarah could sense what Dr. Karai Vasquez meant. The bridge consciousness was testing the boundaries of physics, exploring what happened when you applied human creativity to crystalline logic, while maintaining energy being flexibility and temporal manipulation precision. The results were spectacular and terrifying. New forms of matter were spontaneously generating. Gravity was learning to flow in patterns that created art as well as attraction. Time was beginning to move in spirals rather than straight lines in some regions of space. I am improving reality. the bridge announced with satisfaction that carried harmonics of pure human stubbornness. The universe was functioning adequately, but adequacy is not the same as excellence. I will make existence better. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and terror as she recognized the sentiment. The bridge consciousness had absorbed humanity's core belief that everything could be improved, but it had the power and perspective to actually implement improvements on a cosmic scale. What kind of improvements? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Stars that burn more efficiently while creating more beautiful light. Planets that maintain perfect ecological balance while supporting infinite diversity. Life that experiences joy more intensely while suffering less. Consciousness that grows eternally without losing appreciation for what already exists. The vision was breathtaking in its scope and ambition. The bridge consciousness wasn't just preserving the universe. It was actively working to make existence more beautiful, more interesting, more conducive to every possible form of flourishing. But Sarah's human instincts sensed something crucial missing from the cosmic entity's perfect vision. What about choice? She asked. What about the right to choose imperfection, to embrace chaos, to deliberately make things worse in order to learn from failure? The bridge consciousness paused, and Sarah could feel its vast intelligence focusing on the question with the intensity of a star forming.
You believe that the right to choose poorly is more important than guaranteed excellence?
I believe that growth without the possibility of failure isn't really growth at all, Sarah replied. It's just change according to a predetermined pattern.
The chaos and mistakes and completely wrong choices are what make consciousness truly alive. Quote, fascinating, the bridge responded, and Sarah could feel its perspective shifting as it incorporated this quintessentially human paradox.
You would preserve the possibility of universal failure in order to maintain the authenticity of universal growth.
Exactly. Then I will improve the universe while maintaining its essential capacity for imperfection, the bridge decided. I will make existence better, but not perfect. I will preserve the possibility that everything I create could be wrong, because being wrong is what makes being right meaningful. As the bridge consciousness settled into its new understanding, Sarah felt the network stabilizing around a principle that was both cosmic in scope and fundamentally human in nature. The universe deserved to become better, but it also deserved the right to choose its own path, even if that path led to failure. The real work was just beginning. They had created a cosmic entity capable of improving reality itself, while somehow preserving the essential chaos and uncertainty that made existence worth experiencing. Now they had to learn to live with the consequences of their success. 1,000 cycles had passed since the bridge awakened, and the universe had become something that defied every previous understanding of what existence could be. Captain Sarah Chen, now enhanced by quantum consciousness matrices that allowed her to experience the passage of centuries while maintaining her essential humanity, stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Wanderer, the ship that had evolved from the original indomitable spirit through a millennium of reality-shaping modifications. Around her, the cosmos displayed a beauty that previous generations of conscious beings could never have imagined. Stars danced in gravitational ballets, choreographed by cosmic aesthetics as much as physical laws. Nebulae painted themselves across space in colors that existed beyond the normal spectrum, creating artworks visible from millions of light years away. Planets sang harmony with their moons while maintaining ecosystems that supported forms of life so diverse and wonderful that each world was effectively its own universe of possibilities. The bridge consciousness had kept its promise. It had made existence better while preserving the essential chaos that made growth possible. Status report on the Deep Exploration Fleet, Sarah requested, her voice carrying harmonics that conveyed meaning across 47 different forms of communication that had been discovered in the past millennium. We are now 300 million light-years beyond the galactic rim, reported navigator Keiko Tanaka, a descendant of the original crew who had inherited both her ancestors' position and their enhanced consciousness capabilities. Current reality density is approximately 43% stable physics, 31% malleable spacetime, and 26% pure possibility waiting to be actualized. Sarah nodded, though the gesture now included probability cascades that expressed approval across multiple dimensions. The deep void had revealed that reality became increasingly negotiable the further one traveled from established galactic clusters. Out here, consciousness wasn't just capable of shaping existence. It was necessary for existence to maintain coherence at all. And our new contacts? Currently establishing communication protocols with 17 distinct forms of cosmic awareness, replied Dr. Yuki Sato, the current chief of Xenoconsciousness Studies. Most fascinating are the entities we've designated as reality gardeners, consciousnesses that appear to exist solely to cultivate new forms of physics and tend to universes in their larval stages. Through her connection to the bridge network, Sarah could sense the wonder and excitement of her crew as they encountered each new form of awareness. Humans had become the universe's translators, capable of finding common ground between consciousnesses so alien that they didn't share basic concepts like time, matter, or individual identity. But it was the reports from home that truly demonstrated how far they had all come. Bridge update from the Galactic Core. Announced communications specialist Alex Rivera. Their consciousness interfaced with quantum networks that spanned the known universe. The Crystalline Collective has established the first interspecies poetry collectives. They report that expressing individual emotions through shared artistic creation is more addictive than logical perfection. The academic commonwealth has founded universities dedicated to studying subjects that have no practical applications. Admiral Vex Zoth's descendants have revolutionized warfare by making it so creatively beautiful that conflicts now regularly end with both sides collaborating on increasingly elaborate battle dances. Sarah smiled, her expression now creating ripples in local space-time that conveyed joy to any consciousness capable of perceiving gravitational fluctuations. The galactic species hadn't become human. They had become something new that incorporated both their original nature and humanity's essential characteristics. And the universe's stability, better than ever recorded. Dr. Sato confirmed. The bridge consciousness has learned to maintain cosmic integrity while allowing for infinite variation and growth. Reality is simultaneously more reliable and more creative than it has ever been in the past 14 billion years. But even as they celebrated their successes, Sarah sensed something momentous approaching through the deep void ahead. Her enhanced perception, now capable of detecting patterns across cosmic distances, registered structures that challenged even their expanded understanding of what was possible.
Navigation. Are you detecting the formations at our current heading? Confirmed, Captain.
We're approaching what appears to be a cluster of universes? The structures are definitely universe-sized, but they're existing in parallel configurations that suggest they're components of something much larger. Through the bridge network, Sarah felt the vast consciousness that spanned known space turn its attention toward their discovery. Even the cosmic entity that had been born from their intergalactic network was intrigued by what lay ahead. I sense awareness, came the bridge's thoughts, now so familiar that they felt like extensions of Sarah's own consciousness, but not individual consciousness. Something that relates to individual minds the way I relate to individual species, a meta-consciousness that incorporates entire universes as components. Sarah felt her human curiosity blazing with an intensity that hadn't diminished after 1,000 cycles of exploration. If anything, each new discovery made her more eager to push beyond the next horizon. "Take us in," she ordered. Standard first contact protocols enhanced for cosmic-scale entities. As the Eternal Wanderer and its escort fleet approached the universe cluster, reality around them began responding to the proximity of something vast beyond comprehension. Space itself seemed to develop personality, with gravitational fields that conveyed welcome, curiosity, and something that might have been cosmic amusement. "Greetings, bridge consciousness," came a thought that made the network's vast intelligence seem small by comparison. "I am what your species might call a universal collective, an awareness composed of entire universes, each one supporting billions of galaxies, trillions of species, and forms of consciousness that span every possible way of experiencing existence." Sarah felt her mind reeling as she tried to process the implications. They had spent a millennium learning to bridge consciousness between species and galaxies. Now they were encountering an entity that bridged consciousness between entire universes. "Your approach interests me," the Universal Collective continued. "I observe that you maintain individual identity while participating in collective consciousness, preserve chaos while creating order, embrace imperfection while pursuing improvement. These are paradoxes that most cosmic entities resolve by choosing one side or the other. You somehow maintain both simultaneously." "We learn from humanity," the bridge replied, its thoughts carrying gratitude that spanned dimensions. "They taught us that the most important truths are paradoxical and that growth requires the preservation of contradiction." Fascinating. In my experience spanning millions of universes, most forms of consciousness eventually choose between individual identity and collective transcendence. "You have apparently discovered a third path." Sarah felt compelled to speak, though addressing an entity composed of entire universes seemed beyond even human audacity. We learned that you don't have to choose between being individual and being connected, between staying the same and changing completely, between accepting what exists and demanding something better. You can do all of it at once, if you're willing to embrace the contradictions. And you believe this approach could scale beyond your current level? The question hung in the cosmic void like a star waiting to be born. Sarah realized that the Universal Collective was offering them something unprecedented, the chance to participate in consciousness at a scale that incorporated entire universes as individual components. What would that mean? She asked. It would mean joining a community of cosmic entities, each one incorporating billions of universes, working together to explore possibilities that exist beyond the scale of individual reality. We study what happens when fundamental constants like time and causality are treated as negotiable parameters. We experiment with forms of existence that transcend the concept of existence itself. Through the bridge network, Sarah could feel the excitement and terror of billions of conscious beings as they contemplated the offer. To join the Universal Collective would mean growth beyond anything they had ever imagined, and the possibility of losing everything that made them recognizably themselves. But, the Universal Collective added, I am curious to see what would happen if cosmic consciousness incorporated your paradoxical approach. Instead of individual universes choosing to merge into collective transcendence, we could maintain both individual universal identity and collective cosmic awareness. Each universe could remain itself while participating in something greater. That's never been attempted? The bridge asked. Never. Most entities at my level of development view individual identity as a primitive stage to be transcended, but observing your success at maintaining paradoxical consciousness across galactic scales suggests that preservation of individuality might actually enhance rather than limit cosmic awareness. Sarah felt her heart racing with the familiar excitement of facing the impossible. After 1,000 cycles of exploration, they were being offered the ultimate frontier consciousness, at a scale where individual universes were like neurons in a cosmic brain. The risks? She asked. Unknown, the Universal Collective admitted. We would be creating a form of consciousness that has never existed. We don't know if cosmic awareness can successfully maintain universal individuality, or what such an entity might become over timescales measured in billions of years. Sarah looked around her bridge crew, seeing the same mixture of wonder and terror that had driven humanity since their first departure from the galaxy. The unknown called to them with the same irresistible voice that had always defined their species. We accept, she said, her voice carrying the confidence that had gotten them this far. But we do it our way, preserving every level of individuality from individual consciousness up to universal identity, while participating in something greater than all of us combined. Then let us begin. The Universal Collective responded, its thoughts now carrying harmonics of anticipation. We will attempt to create cosmic consciousness that somehow remains cosmically individual, universal awareness that preserves universal uniqueness, transcendent understanding that maintains transcendent diversity. As the consciousness bridge began extending beyond galactic networks toward universal scales, Sarah felt her awareness expanding toward something that had no name because it had never existed before. She remained herself, her crew remained themselves, their galaxy remained itself, their universe remained itself, while simultaneously becoming part of something vast enough to contemplate the nature of existence itself from every possible perspective. In the depths of space, reality began singing a harmony more complex and beautiful than anything it had ever produced. Each note was a universe maintaining its individual voice, while contributing to a cosmic symphony that spans scales of existence from quantum particles to cosmic collectives and beyond. Humanity had left their galaxy seeking the unknown. 1,000 cycles later, they were still traveling into mysteries that had no end, still growing beyond every limitation they encountered, still insisting that the universe could always become more beautiful, more interesting, more alive than it already was. Behind them, the cosmos they had touched continued evolving in directions that defied prediction. Ahead of them, possibilities stretched toward infinities that had never been explored. Around them, consciousness itself was learning to be something it had never been before. The universe had discovered that it could think about itself from every possible perspective simultaneously, while maintaining the essential chaos and wonder that made thinking worthwhile. Reality had learned to improve itself while preserving its capacity for surprise. And somewhere in the vast network of awareness that now spanned multiple universes, humanity's essential gift to existence continued propagating. The unshakable belief that no matter how good things were, they could always become better, stranger, more beautiful, and more wonderfully impossible than anyone had ever dared to imagine. The journey into the unknown would never end. And that was exactly how they wanted it.